Hello friends, welcome to REST API demo. Guys, in this video, we'll talk about the most popular REST API functions. Like we are going to discuss GET function. We use GET function to fetch either a single resource or multiple resources from the database. Okay. Then we'll talk about POST call or POST mapping. Basically, we use POST call to create a new resource. Then we'll talk about PUT function. PUT is basically to update to create a new resource if it does not exist. Okay, then we'll talk about patch. We use patch function to partially update a resource. Guys, then we'll talk about the delete mapping. We use delete mapping to delete a specific resource or all the resources from the database. Alright guys, so that being said, let's begin the video. So guys, in this video we'll be creating a Spring Boot Bash project. We will be using H2 database. We'll deploy our REST API code on Tomcat server. Okay, and we'll be using Postman to test our REST API endpoints. Alright guys, let's move. Now guys, here I put all the endpoints that we are going to discuss in this video. So guys, if you look at the endpoints, most of the endpoints look exactly same, right? But the difference is with the functions. Say for example, I have to fetch all the resources. I will be using a GET call to this particular endpoint to fetch all the resources, right? Which looks exactly similar to the POST call, right? And to delete also, we are using same endpoint, but the difference lies here in the function. If I'm using a GET function, then I'm going to fetch all the resources. If I'm using a POST function, it means we are going to create a new resource. And if I'm using delete with the same endpoint, it means we are going to delete all the resources. Alright guys, now if we have to deal with any specific resource, we have to pass the ID. Say for example, I want to fetch a single resource. So I have to pass the ID here to fetch the specific information. Okay. Say for example, I want to update a specific resource. I will pass the ID here, right? And say I want to delete any specific resource, I have to pass the ID, right? So the endpoints look exactly similar, right? But the difference lies with the function that we are going to use with the particular endpoint. All right. So guys, I will talk about each endpoint in the more details in the demo section. All right. Let's move. All right, guys. Let's have a look at our project structure. Okay. I'm going to start the IDE. So guys, here is our project. We have a controller class here. In controller, we have injected the service layer. Let me open the service class. And in service layer, we have injected the repository class. Let me open this particular. Here, this repository is an interface and we are extending JPA repository, okay, to perform all the database operation. Okay. Now if I go back to the controller class, what do I have? I have a get mapping. That is the one function, okay, to get all the resources. Find all function from the service layer. And if I go inside, what I'm doing here is basically we are calling find all function from the repository. Alright guys, so basically now if I have to test our get mapping, this is the endpoint. I'll simply copy the endpoint and I will go to the postman. Okay, I'm going to make a get call. So here I have to choose the function get. So by default it's get only. I'll paste the endpoint and I'm going to click on the send button. So guys, basically we are making a get call to fetch all the resources or all the students from the database. So what do you see here in the result section? We don't have anything. There is nothing returned. All right, guys. So what I will do now, we'll first go and work on the post call. So post is to create a new resource. So as of now, we don't have any resource, right? So we have to go to the IDE and we'll write some code to make the post call. Let's go back to the IDE. All right, guys. So here I have added the code to make the post call. I have created a function called add user. We are passing the student information here, right, to our function. Here we are calling the save function from the service layer. So if I go to the service layer, let me click on the save. If you see, what I'm doing here is we are calling the save function from the JPA repository to save the information into the database. All right, guys. Now guys, here let me just explain that I have already configured the H2 database here. You can see all the information in the application.properties file. Okay. Now guys, let's go back here. Now guys, if you look at the value which I'm returning from this particular function is an object of response entity. So here we are passing the student that we are adding to the database plus status code. Alright guys. Now guys, to test this particular application, let me just stop. I'll copy the endpoint. Let me just start our application. Now here you need to understand that how can you pass data, because here you have to supply the information, right? So if I go to our entity class student, what do we have? We have got ID, name and email, right? So we have to supply the required information to create a resource. All right. So I'll go to postman. We are going to make a new call. I'll choose the post function because we are going to make a post call. The endpoint is exactly same, http://localhost:800/students, right? Now guys, here we have to pass the information, right? So I'll go to the body here and I'll go to row. I'll go and choose JSON here. Now here I'm passing the input value into the JSON format. Okay. So what do we have? We have got ID as the one attribute, value is going to be 1. Then we have student name, okay, pass as, okay, and in the email I'll simply pass key@abc.com. Doesn't matter, you can pass whatever you feel like. Let me click on beautify. Okay, so basically this is what we are sending to the our REST API. Alright guys, now let me just click on send. So what do you see here? You have got the response. So the response is the student object with status code. Here you can see 201 resource created. Alright. So if you go to the code and if you look at the response here, we are returning a response entity with the student object plus status code. Right. So this object has got 3 attributes that we can see here: ID, name and email, and status code, which is 201. So alright guys, I hope this is clear. So now guys, we have inserted one record in our table, right? We are going to test the get endpoint now. So I'll go to the postman. Let's go to this particular endpoint, get call, okay, and I'm going to click on send. I'm expecting one record here. So here you can see that we have got one record, ID1 Ricky S, ricky@abc.com, right? So guys, if you want, I can simply go and create another resource, resource 2, and I will add Rahul D here, rahul@abc.com, right? So this is the second resource which we are going to add. I'm going to click on send. I can see the information here and the status code 201 resource created. All right. Now guys, if I go back and click on the get call, so now I should see 2 records, right? ID1 and ID2, all good, right? Now guys, next is how can we fetch a single resource? So guys, here we have seen that we can fetch all the resources from the database, but how can we fetch any specific resource? For example, I want to fetch the resource where ID equals to 1 or ID equals to 2, right? All right. So how can we do that? So let's go back to the IDE. So let me just pause this video for a second. Alright guys, so here I have added some code to fetch a single resource. So guys, our endpoint would look something like this: http localhost 8080 /student /id. That is what we want to fetch. For example, I want to fetch the ID 1 information or 2 or 3 and 4, right? So in the path variable, I'm using the curly braces and the ID. So basically, this is a variable. So this is a variable. It means it can have different values. Okay. Now to read this particular variable from the path, from the URI path, I'm using @path variable annotation. All right. And then guys, if you look at it here, this particular line number 46, what I'm doing is from service layer, I'm calling a function called find by ID. If there is no information, I'm throwing an exception called record not found exception. There is a record. I'm returning the information, the resource information with the status code found. So found is 302. Alright guys. Now let me show you what is there in the service layer. So find by ID here, what I'm doing here is I'm calling a function from the repository called find by ID. Okay. So JPA repository has a function called find by ID to find a resource by the ID. Now to test this particular endpoint, I will stop our application. Let me just go and start again. I'll copy the endpoint. Okay, so okay, now let's go to the REST client. So guys, here we are going to make the get call again, but this time we are passing a value here, a parameter 1. I want to fetch the resource 1. I want to fetch the resource where ID equals to 1. Simple. Let me just click on send. So what it says resource. Okay, alright guys, so to fix that resource not found issue, what I did, earlier I was using the in-memory database, okay, but now I've changed to file based, right? So basically every time if I restart my application, I want to persist the data into the file system, right? Now I'll just go back to the Postman. I have to add the resource, so we have added the resource 1. Okay, let me just go and add one more resource here, resource. So we have got the new resource added, and here I can see the status code. Okay, run our get call to get all the resources. So here I can see we have got two resources, resource 1 and resource 2, right? But our idea is to fetch a specific resource. So here we have passed the resource ID 1. I want to fetch the resource where ID equals to 1. So here I can see the information. We have got ID 1, name, email ID, and status code 302. Alright guys, now if I go and look for resource 2, I'll simply change the ID, click on send, and here I can see the result. Alright guys, now guys, in case if I look for a resource if it does not exist, for example, if you go here, we have only two records, ID1 and ID2, right? What if I go and try to fetch a resource ID3? Let me click on send. What do you see? It says not found, right? So basically this is what we did here in code. If you go to our controller class, so guys, here you can see that here we have put a check. If resource does not exist, if this is false, then throw record not found exception. Okay, so if I go to this particular class, here we are sending a status code not found. Okay, which is 404 not found with the message. All right, that is what you can see. So if you go here, you see this particular part does not exist, resource not found, and the status code is 404. Okay. Alright guys, now we'll talk about the put mapping or the put call. So guys, here to understand the put function, you have to keep two things in mind. 2 points basically. One, that we use put function to update an existing resource. Okay. So always make sure that if you want to update an existing resource, go and use put function. Second, what it does, if the resource does not exist, it creates the resource for you. Okay, so guys, let me explain the code. So guys, here I have added the put mapping. Okay, so this is our endpoint. So guys, here the point is we are going to update an existing resource, so we have to pass the ID that, okay, I want to update resource where ID equals to 1 2 3 4 5 1, so on. Okay, and second thing, you have to supply the complete resource. Okay, so let me just explain this particular thing, what is happening, what do I mean by that. You have to supply the complete resource. So I'll go to REST API client. Okay, let me just go, and this time I'm going to test the put call. Okay, I'll just copy the endpoint here, http:// localhost. Okay, say for example I want to update resource 1. Okay, so we have to supply two arguments. One is the ID that we want to update, resource ID. So here I'm passing 1. Now I have to pass the attributes as well that I want to update. Okay, so I'll go row, I'll go to JSON here, and I'm going to create JSON object. Okay, so guys, here we have already passed the ID. Now I have to pass the other attributes. Okay, say the other attributes are name. Okay, so name, say I want to change it to Ricky Ponting. Okay, and say I don't want to change the email ID. I don't want to update anything into the email ID, so I'll keep the email as it is, ricky@abc.com. Okay, first of all you have to pass the ID that we want to update. Okay, and second thing, you have to pass the complete object, all the attributes of your object. Okay, let me make this end. So what do you see here? You can see that we have got the resource ID 1, name is Ricky Pointing, it has been changed. Okay, and the status code here you see success 200. Okay, so say for example you want to keep the name as it is and you want to change the email ID only. All right, so for that, say ricky.p, again you have to pass the complete object. When I say complete object, it means you have to pass all the attributes of the object. Okay, now you see the name is Ricky Ponting and email ID has been changed to ricky.p@abc.com. Alright guys, I hope this is clear. If you want me to explain the code, this is very simple. I'm calling an update student by ID a function. I'm passing two arguments. One is the complete object, second one is the ID. That is where I want to update the resource. Okay, and what I'm doing is here I'm creating a new update object. I'm passing ID from here and the values like name and email from the object which is coming from the REST client. Simple guys. And here I have called the save function of the JPA repository to store the information. Right now guys, let's talk about the second scenario. For example, so I'm going to add a resource called 3, but I know that this resource does not exist, so I will pass some arguments. Let's see the behavior. I'll pass here file and here. Alright guys, so basically we are going to make a put call to this particular endpoint where we know that resource does not exist and we have passed the complete object. Okay, so name and email. Let me click on send. Let's see the behavior. So what do you see guys? Here you can see status equals 200. Okay, we have got ID 3, file and email ID. Let's go and fetch all the resources from the database, and here we have got the new resource as well, right? So guys, this is the beauty of put function. So there are 2 points behind the put function that you always keep in mind. One is we use put mapping or put function to update an existing resource. If the resource does not exist, put function will create the new resource. All right, I hope this is clear. Now guys, next is patch. Guys, patch is very important to understand. So we use patch function to partially update a resource. So when I say partially, so guys, if you remember here, while using the put function, we have to pass the complete object. So basically we have to pass the all the attributes of the object. But in case of patch, you can specify a single attribute that I want to partially, you can update your resource partially. So guys, let me do one thing. Let me write some code and let me explain how it exactly works. Okay, all right guys, so here I have added some code to perform the patch operation. Okay, patch. So if you look at here, I have used @patch mapping annotation. So basically we are going to make a patch call. Patch is to partially update a resource. Okay, partial update. So if you look at it here, I'm passing two arguments. One is the ID that I want to update. Okay, I want to update resource one, and I have to pass the object. So what I'm doing here is, first I'm checking that whether do we have that resource or not, because we are going to perform the update operation, right? So the very first requirement, the resource should exist into the database. If it is not there, throw an exception saying record not found. All right. Now here in the else part, what I'm doing here is I'm creating a new update object here. Okay. I am taking the data from the current, from this particular object, current student object. I am fetching the existing information and updating the existing information from data coming from the REST client. Okay. And updating into the update object. Okay. And here I'm simply calling the save function of my repository. If I go inside the save call, I'm calling the save function from the repository. All right. Simple, right? Nothing much complex. Restart our application. I'll show you how this particular patch function really works. It is started. Okay, it is done. I'll go to REST client, which is Postman. Now this time, guys, we are going to test the patch. Okay, so the endpoint will look like exactly the same. So here I'm passing that I want to update resource 1. Simple. Okay, or say resource 3. So if I go to our get call, we have got 3 resources, right? I want to update the name of this particular resource where id equals to 3. Okay, so I'm passing 3. Now I'll go to here body row. Let me go and select JSON. Now guys, remember this particular thing. This is very important, that I want to update name only, right? So I'm just passing partial information. I'm just passing file G. Okay, I'm just passing partial information. I'm not passing email here, just one attribute of the object. Okay, let me click on send and let's see the behavior. What do you see? You have got id 3, name updated, file, and then space, then G. Email is as it is because we did not change the email id. Okay, let's go to the get, click on get, and here also you see the updated information, right? So basically patch is to partially update a resource. Why do you want to send all the information if you just have to update just one attribute? Okay, so guys, let's have a look here at the put. So guys, in put you have to pass the complete object. Okay, no matter what is the situation. So for example, if you want to update one attribute or two attribute or all the attributes, you have to pass all the attributes in put. But in case of patch, it is not like that. You just pass the attribute that you want to update. Say for example, I want to update email. Okay, so I'll just pass only one attribute, which is email id. Okay, so what I will do, I will use file.g at the rate okay java.com. Simple, right? I'm not sending all the attributes of the object. I'm just passing only one attribute that I want to change. I want to update the email id. That's it, right? Let me click on send, and you see here you've got the latest email id as well, right? So I hope you've got the difference between put and patch. Now guys, next one is delete mapping. So this is very simple. Delete can be used to delete a specific resource, or delete can be used to delete all the resources. All right, so let me give you a demo. Let's go to the id. Let's first write some code. All right guys, so delete mapping is very much simple. So I have used here at the rate delete mapping. So our endpoint would look something like this. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm passing the resource id that I want to delete. What I'm doing is I'm first checking whether do we have that resource id into the database or not. If it does not exist, we'll simply supply an exception message that resource not found. If the resource exists, if the ID exists into the database, let's go and delete the resource. So what I'm doing here is, if I go to the service layer function, I'm simply calling the delete by ID function of JPA repository. Very simple. Okay, I don't think I have to explain this particular thing. Let me just stop and restart our application, and I will just give you a demo of the delete. How can we delete a single resource? Okay, this is just to delete a single resource. All right, let's go to the Postman. I'm going to create a new request. Let's go and select delete. Now guys, here the endpoint would look something like this: http:// localhost 8080 /student/1. So basically I want to delete the resource where id equals to 1. Simple, right? Hit the send button. What do you see? Here it says a message, student 1 deleted successfully, and here you can see the status code, right? So this is when you want to delete a specific resource. Now guys, if you go and click on the get mapping where you fetch all the resources, now you don't see the resource 1. It's deleted. All right. Now guys, in case if you want to delete a resource which does not even exist, right? Say I want to delete a resource where id equals to 5. Okay. Let me click on send. What do you see? Here it says resource not found, which is true. We don't even have the resource id 5 into the database. Correct? I hope this is clear. Now guys, we'll do one more thing. Delete can be used to delete all the resources in just one go. Okay, let's say that behavior. So for that we have to add some code here. Okay, so just give me a minute. Alright guys, so delete is pretty much simple. So this time here I have used @delete mapping, and if you look at the endpoint, I'm not passing any attribute. So if you look at it here, delete a single resource, we have to supply the ID, right? But here in the endpoint you don't see that, right? Because why? Here we are going to delete all the resources, right? And if you look at the function, the implementation, what I'm doing here is I'm calling the delete all function of the JPA repository. But in case where you have to delete the single resource, I've invoked delete by ID function. Okay, to delete a single resource function. Simple, right? Now what I will do, I'll stop our application and let me just restart. So our endpoint would look something like this: http://localhost:8080/ simple. Just copy this endpoint. I'll put the endpoint. I have to test the delete. Okay, I'm calling delete all. I'm going to delete all the resources, right? How will you know that we are going to delete all the resources or a single resource? So just by looking at the endpoint, you will come to know. Okay, if your endpoint has some parameter, some argument, then it means you are going to delete a specific resource. If there is nothing in your endpoint, it means you are going to delete all the resources, right? Let me go and click on send, and what do you see here? All records deleted. Let's go and verify. I'll go to the get and click on get again, and what do you see now? Blank, no record found. Simple, right? So I hope this is clear. So alright guys, in this video we have discussed get function to get a single resource and to fetch all the resources. We have discussed the post call to add a resource into the database, right? We have seen put function, put to update an existing resource or to create a new resource if the resource does not exist. Okay, then we have discussed the patch mapping. Patch function is to partially update a resource. While using the patch, you don't have to pass the entire object, you just pass the attribute that you want to update. Simple. Okay, and then in the end we have seen the delete to delete a single resource or to delete all the resources from the database. Alright guys, thank you for watching.